Hi again, everyone. Gary Digital Williams here on Boxing on the Beltway, the Boxing on the Beltway podcast network with news and notes for this week. And, of course, the Boxing on the Beltway podcast network can be heard on Spreaker, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. We're on TuneIn, Spotify, Google Podcasts, CastBox. We're also on many other podcast networks. And also we're on YouTube, my Gary Williams page on YouTube. Also, my Twitter page, Digital25, and also we're on the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network page on Facebook. You can hear this podcast in many different locations. And this week, got to talk about this week. We have breaking news on a bout that has been canceled for a Beltway Boxer. And last week, we gave you the information that it might take place. Then we got word after the podcast was done last week that it would take place, and now it's not going to take place again. So we'll give you the details on that. We'll give you updates on the week's schedule, this past week's results, and I got some things to say about these week's results, in all honesty, and we'll talk more about that. We'll give you the updates on the schedule for the week, and we're going to look back at a couple of special cards for me. And I was thinking about this just recently. And I realized in my almost 37 years now covering boxing in the boxing along the Beltway area, in the Beltway boxing area, I have only attended two cards that were held outdoors. And I want to talk about that today. Actually, when I did my tribute to boxing spotlight, I talked about one of the bouts on one of the cards, but they have some interesting things in common. And there was some interesting cards, no question about that. So we'll talk about that on this podcast as well. The Boxing on the Beltway Podcast Network is brought to you always by Real-Time Pain Relief. From boxers to ballerinas, for shoulder pain and muscle strain, everything between, Boxing along the Beltway recommends Real-Time Pain Relief, the natural, plant-based, safe, fast, and effective ointment. Go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real-Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real-Time Pain Relief, now endorsed by Big George Foreman, two-time world heavyweight champion. So try his knockout plan for real-time pain relief. Rub it on. The pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. She has great weight loss tips, great jewelry, and great training methods. All at Deborah, Debra Spears.com. Well, the breaking news we have this week, it got to take you back to late last week, right after we actually went off the air. We talked about a card that was taking place in El Paso, Texas next week. And there was a change in the bout. And actually what happened was that Jaime Munguia, the former world champion, the former world junior middleweight champion, he was scheduled to take on Maciej Sulecki of Poland for a international title belt. Well, Sulecki lost his was taken out of the bout because he hurt his back during training. So there was talk at that time that the bout Golden Boy Promotions would actually ask for Demetrius Big Meats Ballard, Temple Hills middleweight undefeated. That he would be offered for the bout. And so the bout would take place at the Don Haskins Center on the campus of the University of Texas, El Paso. Now, after the bout was over, after the podcast was over, I should say, we got the word that Ballard would be indeed on the card for April 23rd, Friday, April 23rd, same place, Texas, El Paso, for WBO Intercontinental Middleweight title. The bout will be streamed live on the Zone. Now, we just received word, though, today that Ballard hurt his elbow in training, and now he is no longer on that card at the University of Texas El Paso. That card itself is off. The whole thing is completely off. And again, Ballard hurt his elbow during training. So the problem with that, though, is that Ballard may not get another chance. This is going to put him in a very awkward position because he may not get another opportunity for the bout because Munguia was originally scheduled to take on Sulecki. So I don't know where this happened. I mean, I'm pretty sure that Golden Boy Promotions, who promotes both Mungia and Ballard, is going to push for Ballard to stay in this bout. But whether or not he can, I don't know. We'll see. If Selecki heals from his back injury, he probably will get the shot. But I don't know. We'll see. It's a tough break, though. And you hate to see this because I know Ballard was getting ready for this bout. And it's going to be interesting. By the way, the information that comes from Fight Freaks Unite, the great podcast, great blog, I should say, by Dan Rayfield. So once again, Big Beast bout is out of the card. And the whole bout is called off between him and Jaime Mungia. Ballard suffered an elbow injury in training. Okay, so that takes care of that. Now, our results for this week. And I got to say something about some of these results. You got to wonder. And it's something that I've been wondering, and my partner Juan Marsh has been wondering for a long, long time. And it just keeps going. And I think in this particular case, since these boxes are so close to the location, I don't know if they can stop it. Okay, like we can here in D.C. and in Maryland and Virginia. But we'll tell you what happened. 5 Beltway Boxers appeared on a card at the Thomas Gymnastics Center in Rock Hill, South Carolina, back on Saturday, April the 10th. And all 5 of them scored first-round knockouts. Baltimore, Maryland super middleweight Jesse the Beast Nicolo, he defeated Juan Celine Zapata of the Bronx, New York, by way of Honduras. Now, the bout was stopped at the end of the very first round. Nicolo raises his record to 28-10 with 3 draws and 10 KOs. Zapata falls to 6-18-2 for KO. So, you know, Nicolo beat a guy that had a well on 500 record, so he was supposed to win the bout, and he did. No question about that. Now, here we go. Baltimore, Maryland super lightweight Malik King Warren needed just 29 seconds to knock out Deron Jenkins of Wilson, North Carolina. Warren remains perfect, 5-0, 5 KOs, while Jenkins is 0-4. So Warren continues his winning ways. Of course, he's a Mayweather Promotions boxer, and he's continuing on his way. Oxon Hill, Maryland welterweight Akeem Action Jackson. He just needed 28 seconds to knock out Tawan Wooten of Wilson, North Carolina. And so I think you know where I'm going with this. Wooten is now 4-2 for KOs, and Jackson just fought a couple weeks ago and won a knockout. So he's on a good roll right now. And Wooten is now 0-3. Atlanta, Maryland light heavyweight Aaron the Wolf Thorne scored a TKO over the debuting James Horn. No word where James Horn is from. Probably North Carolina, but we'll see. I don't know. But Thorne pummeled Horn until the bout was stopped at 152 of the first round. Thorne is 3-0, 2 KOs. Up in Marlboro, Maryland, super lightweight Stacy Selby knocked out, Xavier Ford of Concord, North Carolina. Selby, I had a chance to see a couple of highlights of this bout. Selby landed a number of shots before hitting the canvas. Ford hit the canvas to stay at 150 of the first round. Selby is 2-0, 2 KOs. Ford is 0-11. You know where I'm going with this, folks. You listen to my podcast any length of time, you know where I'm going with this. And I think in this case, though, they're so close to South Carolina that you can't stop them from coming in. We can stop the folks from Wilson, North Carolina, coming into the Beltway, coming into D.C., coming into Maryland, coming into Virginia. We can stop that. We can't stop it, and I would assume they can't stop it in South Carolina because they're from North Carolina. They're from the same locations. But what it sounds like to me is that the promoter, Southpaw Promotions, the name of the promotion company, and I have a sincere feeling that they did this bout on this card on the cheap. And with these guys from North Carolina who can't spell fight, who don't know anything about boxing, look like Fred Flintstone, Barney Rubble fighting. If you've seen the Flintstones, you know what I'm talking about. And they're just having a real tough time. And it's just not a good look for any boxers, especially those out of the Beltway. It's not a good look for them at all. And I think you're doing it because you are doing on the cheap. That's my opinion. Maybe I'm wrong. But they're not spending a boatload of money. They're getting these guys on the cheap who can't spell fight, and some of them look for a place to fall. In the Stacy Selby situation, that guy, his opponent was looking for. His opponent Xavier Ford was looking for a place to fall in that bout, and it was just terrible. So that's where we stand there. So those are the 5 knockouts, first round knockouts in Rock Hill, South Carolina, the Thomas Gymnastics Center on Saturday, April the 10th. Also on Saturday, April the 10th, up in Marlboro, Maryland, heavyweight Mike Silverback Balgan, saw a little highlight on this one. He remained undefeated with a second round knockout over Keith No Holds Bar of Glenville, West Virginia. That was on Saturday, April 10th at the Rustica in Vero Beach, Florida. Balgan knocked down Bar 3 times before the bout was stopped at 2:45 of the second round. Balgan is now 17-0, 13 KOs, and Bar falls to 20, 14-1 with 8 KOs. So Balgan is back, first time he's fought in a while, and he looks like he's in good shape right now. So that was the highlights of the card that took places in South Carolina and in Florida. Oops. Okay, so we're going to get to the schedule at this point. Our next stop will be the schedule. And we'll tell you what the bouts are coming up for this bout. By the way, Troy Transformer Isley out of Alexander, Virginia. He was scheduled to be on the card at the Osage Casino in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That was the bout headline, the card headlined by Joe Smith Jr. Beating Maxime Vlasov for the vacant WBO light heavyweight title. Isley got hurt. He got hurt in training, so he was off that card in Osage, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So he was out of that card. Now, Sharif C3 Rottman scheduled to be on a card either on Saturday, April 17th at the 2300 Arena in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or on Friday, April 23rd in South Haven, Mississippi. I don't know which one it is. So they've had them both, and Dan Rayfield, who put out the fact that Rottman was on the 18th, possibly the April 17th card that Rottman was going to be on. He's no guarantees on that card. He's still looking for an opponent for either card. So we'll see what happens there. Also on the April 17th card, David the Demolisher Varys Pena out of Annapolis, Maryland, super lightweight, looking for his first win. He's 0-4 against Antonio Allen of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in a 4-round contest. Now, Frederick, Maryland cruiserweight Larry Hitman Pryor will indeed take on Scott Lampert of Massachusetts for the New Hampshire State cruiserweight title. That'll be a 6-round bout. He will take on Scott Lampert. That has been official. So that'll be on Saturday, April 17th at the Sports Zone in Derry, New Hampshire. So that's the update on the schedule for this week. And of course, next week, one of the big bouts on the schedule will be on Saturday, April 24th, and that's when Damon Nicholson takes on Edgar Berlanga, the knockout king, who's all his wins have come by first round knockout. So we'll see if Nicholson can stretch him a little bit coming up on Saturday, April 24th, and that bout will be shown on ESPN2. So that'll be the card there. So that'll be Saturday, April 24th, and that'll be from the Silver Spurs Arena in Kissimmee, Florida. Damon Nicholson taking on Edgar Berlanga. That'll be on ESPN. That'll be on ESPN. On Saturday, April the 24th. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about 2 cards. In all my years of doing Beltway Boxing, I've only been to 2 cards that were held outdoors. So we're in the north, we're in the mid-Atlantic. We don't do a lot of outdoor cards because the weather's not stable. And one of the similarities in both the cards I'm going to talk about was the weather in 2 different ways. Weather has had a lot to do with both cards going forward. Also, one boxer was on both of these cards, believe it or not. And the cards are actually a little less than 9 years apart, about 8.5 years apart. And yet one boxer was on both cards. Very interesting. So let's look at these cards. First one was on Saturday, October 15th, 1995. It was at Eastern High School in Washington, D.C., and that was the alma mater of the young man that was on the main event on that card. And that was, of course, the future Hall of Famer, and 3-time world champion Mark Too Sharp Johnson. Now, I've talked about this bout before. When I did my tribute to Boxing Spotlight, I talked about this particular bout between Mark Johnson and Ernest Sneed a while back. Ernest Sneed, I don't think ever fought again after this bout against Mark Johnson. I'm going to talk about the whole card, though, because the card itself was pretty interesting. And it was a card that we did on Boxing Spotlight. And it was a very interesting card. It was a very interesting card. It was promoted by a man who I have the utmost respect for, my closest friend, Sharif Salim, the brother of Adrian Davis. And it was interesting because a few months prior to this card, we did a card at a junior high school, Bacchus Junior High School here in Washington, D.C. And it was a place where they had no air conditioning. And so my partner and I, Charles James and Fight Dr. Jerome Spears, were all now John Hennigan, I think, was on that telecast of Boxing Spotlight. And we were all in our tuxedos, and we are sweating profusely that night. So he practically burned us up in that card at Bacchus Junior High School, which I think was in July, either July or August. And then he almost freezes us in the card at Eastern High School. Now, that card, like I said, was in October. It was the Saturday before the Million Man March here in Washington, D.C. And it got a little windy toward the end of the card. It got a little windy, and it was kind of tough, but it was a great card. Now, Mark Johnson, I said, knocked out Ernest Sneed. If you heard me talk about that during Boxing Spotlight, you heard about the great story my wife tells when Ernest Sneed actually got back to the corner after the first round, and Johnson just pummeled Sneed, knocked him down a couple of times. And when Sneed went back to the corner, his handler said, "You want to go on?" He looked at the handler and said, "You better take these gloves off me." So that was the end of that. So, but that was the card. But also on that card, interesting card. Also in the card was a boxer out of Maryland by the name of Theon Brickhouse Holland. Now, Theon Brickhouse Holland was a pretty good boxer at one point. He didn't go very far, unfortunately, but he was a good boxer, exciting boxer. We had him on Boxing Spotlight a number of times. He won a 6-round decision over John Stewart, a veteran in our area. John Stewart out of Washington, D.C. Maurice Haywood, who was from D.C., he defeated Samuel James, who I believe was from Maryland. He won by a 4-round decision. Walter Linkins out of Maryland won a 3rd-round TKO over John Tooks. We didn't hear much about either one of these guys. One person we did hear a lot about later on was heavyweight by the name of Corey T-Rex Sanders out of Washington, D.C. He knocked out Dale Henry in the first knockout. Corey Sanders, just as an aside, and one day maybe I'll do a story on him, because he was a very interesting story. Was a former football player at Roosevelt Senior High School here in Washington, D.C., Theodore Roosevelt. Mark Johnson, by the way, was an alumnus of Eastern. And Corey was an outstanding football player, played basketball, and was going to college on a football scholarship, but I don't think he had the grades to go. So he took up boxing. And Sharif Salim was his manager. And Corey did very well overall. I mean, he had some tough losses, but he was a very exciting fighter, huge boxer. He was about 6'8", 6'9", and weighed about, when he started, he weighed about 300 pounds. He got his weight down, but he was just imposing over a lot of boxers that he fought. So he also fought Andrew Galata at one time, and lost to him, but it was a very, very tough fight, no question about that. But Corey Sanders was a very promising heavyweight at one time, Corey T-Rex Sanders. Light heavyweight Terrence Wood, he knocked out Derek Alexander in the first round. And Purcell Hard Rock Miller was undefeated at that time out of Maryland. He scored a first-round TKO over Kato Ali. And that was the card. It was, again, a very interesting card. And it was really just a showcase for Mark Johnson. Actually, 2 fights later, Mark Johnson would win his first world title against Francisco Tejedor. So, even though it was a very short fight, it was a monumental fight eventually, because it did lead was one of those bouts that led Mark Johnson to the world flyweight title. So that was October the 14th, 1995 at Eastern Senior High School in Washington, D.C. Now, Saturday, July 17th, 2004, they had a card at Prince George's Stadium, also known as Bay Sox Stadium. That's where the Bowie Bay Sox, the AA affiliate of baseball team of the Baltimore Orioles, plays their home games. Lovely stadium, really is. But on Saturday, July 17, 2004, it became a boxing venue. And it was a boxing venue of a card that was very, very interesting. The main event on that card was truly one of the greatest female boxers of all time, Layla "She Be Stingin" Ali. And she took on Nikki Epilon on that card in the main event. Now, a couple things about that real quickly. The week prior to that show, the card was promoted by Marty Wynn, the husband of Isra Gerger Wynn, the DC Boxing Hall of Fame and multi-time world champion. I get a phone call from, I believe it was from Marty Wynn, and said, "How would you like to meet Layla Ali?" I said, "Oh, fine, no problem about that." I was writing for Fight News at the time. FightNews.com. I'm still are, but that was at Fight News at the time. So no boxing spotlight at that point. And no boxing on the Beltway at that point either. Boxing on the Beltway didn't come until a year and a half later. But said, "Yeah, sure. I'll go meet her. Where do you want me to go?" "Why don't you go to BWI?" "And I want you to Baltimore Washington International Airport and meet Layla Ali when she gets off her plane." Well, she got off her plane with her husband at that time, Johnny Yaya McClain, who was a former world cruiserweight champion. And Layla Ali and I did her interview on the escalator going to baggage claim. It was very interesting. So we did an interview with her, and she's a very nice lady. I got a chance to meet her again at the card that featured Mike Tyson taking on Kevin McBride. She was the co-feature on that card. So very wonderful lady, nice person, and she was in the main event of that card. Now, I talk about the elements playing a part in both the outdoor cards. Well, it was windy and a little bit chilly at Eastern Senior High School back in 1995. It rained during the card at Prince George's Stadium. And because it rained, they moved because the crowd was there really. It was a good crowd on hand, and they were there to see one person and really one person only, and that was Layla Ali. And so, because it rained that day, they moved Layla Ali from the last bout, the main event portion of the card, to the very first bout on the card. And Ali did not disappoint. She scored a fourth round TKO over Nikki Epilon for the IBA super middleweight title. So it was a good bout. Great to see Layla Ali in person. Great to see her box in person. It was very, very interesting. Now, also in that card, once Layla Ali finished, the other person, the co-feature on this card was Mark Too Sharp Johnson. And he had won his 3 world titles by that point. And he had scored a 10-round unanimous decision over Paulino Villalobos. It was kind of a tough bout. 2 judges, John Gradowski and Don Risher, scored about 96-94. Malik Waleed had it 97-93, all for Johnson. And it was like a couple fights before he finished his career. So Mark Too Sharp Johnson was on this card winning a 10-round unanimous decision. Now, we had a visit from a guy by the name of Ahmad Kaddour. Now, Ahmad Kaddour was a very interesting person. He was out of California. He scored a first-round TKO over Fontaine Cabell of Florida. Now, Fontaine Cabell had been here a number of years before. He had fought Jimmy Lang in a very good bout at the Eagle Bank Arena. And that was a very interesting bout there. But Ahmad Kaddour would win a first-round TKO over Fontaine Cabell. And the very next bout that Ahmad Kaddour would have would be on the very first season of the Contender Series on NBC. In fact, Jimmy Lang, who had knocked out Fontaine Cabell, was also on that year. Contender. So Ahmad Kaddour, very, very brash man. He would knock out Fontaine Cabell 50 seconds of the first round. So that was Ahmad Kaddour. We had another boxer on the card who was a promising person. I don't think he lived up to the promise that he had. He had some tough roads in the latter part of his career, and it was really tough for him. But early on, he was a whirlwind and in fact, he was scheduled to be on the second season of The Contender, but he decided he did not want, there's a clause when you sign a Contender contract that the Contender brand kind of owns you. In other words, you gotta fight on their brand for a while. You cannot really progress in your career as much you want to in some cases. And Henry Buchanan said he didn't want to do that, so he dropped out of the Contender in the second season. But Henry Sugar Poo Buchanan, he knocked out Keith Lawrence, who was making his pro debut. This is Buchanan's fourth pro fight. Knocked out Lawrence in the first round, 2:15 of the first round. So we saw an emerging star at one point in Henry Sugar Poo Buchanan. Now, another bout was scheduled for the card. It lasted only 2 rounds, and the rains came in full force, and they abandoned the bout. It was between Reggie Hawley and Michael Salyer. So that was the last bout on that card. So that was Saturday, July 17th, 2004, the last outdoor card that I covered for my history of Beltway boxing. I like outdoor cards, don't get me wrong, I love them. And it was great to see. And the fans came out until Lay Ali fought, and then just about everybody left. Didn't see the rest of the card, but outdoor cards were a lot of fun, a good experience. We've had outdoor weigh-ins. One of the weigh-ins for the Devin Haney card at MGM National Harbor was actually held outdoors. It was a beautiful sight, beautiful day, and it was great to see that. But we haven't had too many outdoor cards. I think we've had a couple of amateur outdoor cards. Of course, the Berry Farms card is outdoors primarily, and some others. But we've only had 2 pro outdoor cards in my 37 years of covering boxing in this area. I'd love to see more. I really would. No question about that. Well, that will do it for another edition of the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network. Once again, the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network, brought to you by Real-Time Pain Relief. From boxers, ballerinas, for shoulder pain and muscle strain, everything in between, Boxing on the Beltway recommends Real-Time Pain Relief, natural, plant-based, safe, fast, effective ointment. Once again, you go to freepainoffer.com, buy $10 worth of Real-Time Pain Relief. You get a free $10 tube of Real-Time Pain Relief. Once again, now endorsed by 2-time world heavyweight champion Big George Foreman. So try his knockout formula for Real-Time Pain Relief. Rub it on. The pain is gone in real time. And by DeborahSpears.com. Great weight loss tips, great jewelry, and great training methods. All at Deborah, Debra Spears.com. I'm Gary Digital Williams. Thank you so much for joining me, as always, here on the Boxing on Beltway Podcast Network. Look forward to another podcast real soon. Until then, thanks for joining. Always remember, keep supporting the best boxing in the world. The boxing along the Beltway. Thanks for listening. Take care.